Are you ready to branch out, to take a leap of faith, to love yourself and others fully? Then let go of whatever no longer serves you to take action now on Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, and letting it go. Erica will energize and excite you to power up your passionate dream that sets your soul on fire. With Erica's E3 approach, equipping, empowering, and enlightening yourself so you can be yourself for yourself. Get ready and get rooted to live a life without regrets, without what ifs, without should haves, and especially without empty feelings from a life unexplored. This hit show helps you build powerful and intentional roots to live it up, love it up, and let it go. Get fearlessly ready and powerfully rooted in your yes with your host, Erica Gifford Mills, and be fearless about your more and stand in your yes. Now on Get Rooted Radio.
Welcome, everyone. I am Erica Gifford Mills, and you are listening to Get Rooted Radio. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go, right here on Transformation Talk Radio. A big shout out to my new producer today, Nat. Nat, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm excited for the show. Really glad to be with you today.
Tell listeners a little bit about yourself.
I'm originally from Seattle, Washington, born and raised, and I'm a big soccer fan. I'm excited to be producing the show today.
We are glad to have you. Thank you so much. And I'm excited about this episode. It's titled Challenging Ideas Around Service, Communication, and Community. And it's all about rethinking how we connect with each other in the post-pandemic environment, because there is an enormous opportunity to redesign how we do and do not connect with each other. My guest story begins with a singular event that has reshaped her approach to service and how she operates in life generally. We can all reconsider the essentials, starting with kindness, agency, and community. But before we jump right in, I'd like to tell you a little bit about my guest. Alli Onni brings over 2 decades of rich consulting experience, offering insights into organizational dynamics. Her expertise spans change management, organizational development, information technology, and business operations. Alli is a skilled leader and has successfully guided global teams comprising individuals from over 90 countries, speaking 30 different languages and celebrating a culture of diversity and inclusion at every step. Recognized for her commitment to nurturing leadership qualities and fostering personal growth, Alli creates environments and partnerships that promote talent development, innovative thinking, and communication excellence, something that we all need in today's day and age, especially in the global environment. And her approach is both strategic and empathetic, which ensures that growth is sustainable and aligned with organizational goals. She is grounded in the principles of empathy, interdependence, and respect for individual agency. She believes that by fostering these qualities in our personal and professional lives, that we can create futures where success is measured not by only individual achievements, by the collective well-being of our communities. Alli is also a compelling speaker. I have been graced with her presence on stage, and she is a very engaging coach. She holds a Bachelor's of Science and Master's of Science degree in communication from I cannot even pronounce that. I'm going to have you do that.
Rensselaer, yes.
Thank you. Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York. Residing in Austin, Texas area, Alli pursues her passions outside of work as a writer, speaker, avid dog lover, and taco enthusiast. Because we all, right? We can't all be like tacos. Not everybody can love us.
I remember that.
Yes. This blend of professional acumen and personal interest makes her a relatable and inspiring figure in both professional and community settings. So thank you so much, Alli, for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and get the chance to be. Yes, thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So now you have a book. Can you tell us about your book and the background that had you write it?
Yeah, so first off, I never thought I would write a book. And then I had this experience And honestly, the writing process was really cathartic for me and allowed me to put this kind of event into perspective. So it's interesting. It's not a long book, but the writing process caused tears, me to relive some things, but most importantly, put things in perspective. In general, I made a move kind of midlife. I moved from a city I'd been living in for, I don't know, 14 years, moved to a new community and went out hiking one day and fell and broke my leg, out by myself, with my dog. So I wasn't completely by myself. And so the book is really about kind of that whole journey to getting back to safety and having a decent perspective on it. And I met some interesting people along the way in that journey.
So tell me this. Well, first, what's the name of your book?
Oh, it's And Then I Fell, innovative principles for a new age.
And then I think that's what's so important about that, because you moved, right? And
Yeah,
you had this new environment and this new community, and now you're injured. What was it
yeah.
like finding your way in a new community during this time?
You know what? So it was actually amazing. And I feel like a very, very fortunate person in that being new, I had people surround me and help me in so many ways with no history, to obligate them to do it, right? So I was very fortunate, and then I was surrounded by some really great people. And then it also reminded me of just the great people who were in my life in general, who didn't live near me anymore. Like one of my girlfriends was hilarious, but she kept sending me Uber Eats because she wanted to make sure I was eating nutritious food after my injury when I was kind of held up in the house. And so people found a lot of great ways to let me know that I mattered, that I was cared about, and that they were thinking about me. It was really nice.
It's
Great
amazing,
experience.
right? It is
Yeah.
amazing how that happens. And it sounds like you're very grateful for this event and this
Right.
challenge.
Right.
Why? And what was the impact of that?
You know what? So for me, I'm someone who's lived alone most of my adult life. I've been fiercely independent. I'm a kind of an IT person. I'm an introvert. Like if you don't cut off my food supply, I probably don't need to talk to people that often if I have my laptop. And so what this event really did for me is it broke, a lot of routines and practices I had in place that I was so used to that had stopped me from connecting to the people around me, connecting to the people that I had known for years in my life. And so I am very grateful for this. And my life looks fundamentally different today, than it did in 2020 when this happened.
So and of course it happened right during the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
So that you are even more isolated when it comes to
Yes.
that. You're in a new community, it's pandemic,
Yeah.
you don't have your friends and family that maybe were there in your previous city, and having to reestablish that. And like you said, I mean, people always think that I'm an extrovert. I'm a what an extroverted introvert, because there are
Okay.
times where it's, yeah, I can go out there, I can work the room, I can do this, but sometimes when I've been depleted, like you said, there are times where I don't need anything. I got my laptop, I can order, like somebody
Right.
can drop stuff out like Uber Eats, DoorDash,
Yeah.
like, you know
Yeah.
I and it's amazing that when you find yourself then needing
Mm.
something, the people that come out of the woodwork. And I know, I think we're going to get into that next segment, so I don't want to go
Yeah.
too far into that, but it is. And I really appreciate how you're taking something that was bad and turning it
Mm.
into something that's good. And that's kind of like failures, challenges, all those
Yeah.
obstacles, you can use those as building, right? It's like when people throw stones, take those stones and use them as
Yeah. Yeah.
blocks to keep growing. And I love that, because you were grateful, even though yes, this was something that was bad, you were grateful. You used that gratitude, to learn a lesson and continue to move on.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I think it was everything came together. So we had the pandemic, which made the world slow down a little bit. So I could still show up. But we also were in the pandemic where people were being told to be afraid of one another. Okay. And I'm having this completely opposite experience where people were making sure I was okay and taking care of me and doing kind of all these check-ins. And to be honest, I've never been someone who was good at asking for help. I kind of been that person who figures it out and you know get on with it. And I'm not usually that nice to myself. I'm kind of like, just get on with it. There's still laundry to do. Stop being emotional. Just go. And so it was just kind of that perfect environment where everything came together that really allowed me to breathe, experience the experience. And I didn't have a choice. I needed help. So
Yeah.
I had to figure out how to ask, and that's a skill. And it was one I didn't have, and I'm so grateful for the very generous and kind people around me who didn't make me ask well, just saw the need and answered it.
Yeah. And that makes it easier though to ask. I mean, I
Yeah.
when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I was like, no, I got this. I can do this. This is fine. And luckily I have very pushy and bossy sisters. And yes, sisters and brother, if you're listening to this right now, yes, I called you pushy and bossy, but I'm very grateful for that because hyper independence right here and do not like to ask for help. I can do it myself. It doesn't matter. I'm moving this refrigerator. I can do it myself. Right. But when they didn't take no for an answer. And that was very much appreciated because they knew I wouldn't ask for help. And then once I saw that, okay, this is okay. And then it was made it easier when I'm like, you know what? I really don't need you guys here now, but in like 4 days, I am going to need you. So how about don't come now, come in 4 more days, right? Because it made it easier for me to do that because I saw they wanted it. They wanted to help. And it wasn't a sign of weakness, even though, I mean, I tell my clients all the time, my head knows this, but sometimes your heart and probably more so your ego doesn't want to allow yourself to do that. So I'm glad that you learned that as well. And I think that's very, very important.
I'll
So
tell you now, I would never recommend this to anyone, but I literally left my front door key under my mat. And I had neighbors who came in 3 and 4 times a day to make sure the dog was walked, to make sure I had food in my refrigerator, to just chat with me for a while. My neighbor Chris and Britt, lived right across from me, and they just took amazing care. Britt would always come in and at night and make sure that my dog Mumbles had his walk and his time outside, and he'd also bring all my packages because I got very good on Amazon when I was stuck in bed during the pandemic. So he'd always bring my packages down and help me get them opened and all of that stuff. It was really extraordinary, actually.
I love that. So let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about people, contacts, and connections. But before we go, Alli, tell folks how they can reach you or get one of your books.
Yeah. So you can reach me on LinkedIn, and it's Alli Onni. That's kind of the only place I have a strong presence online, and I am working on that. And then you can reach me by email, and that is alli@theonniproject.com. But my email is also in my LinkedIn profile, so you have all my contact information. So if you reach out to me, I would love to make sure you had a book to kind of hear about the adventure.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. You are listening to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. If you missed any portion of today's episode, you can catch it on getrootedradio.com. That's getrootedradio.com. Don't forget to subscribe online to receive the latest news, events, specials, and words of encouragement. Go to getrootedradio.com. Welcome back to my guest, Alli Onni. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here.
So during the last segment, listeners learned the origins of your book, kind of how you got to writing it. And during this segment, we're going to explore people, contacts, and connections. So why are these so important? And what was your experience like?
So what's interesting to me is I met an interesting cast of characters during this event, and they were fundamentally different experiences. Okay. And then obviously I'm in a condition where I have a broken leg. And I'm going to just jump in with this one point. So one of my greatest lessons out of this whole process is really having some very strong distinctions between the difference of being vulnerable and being helpless. Okay. And trust me, when you're laying down on the floor of the woods with, a dog and a leg that is very, very mangled, you kind of learn a lot about that. And I want to assure people, I was not helpless. I couldn't walk, but I certainly wasn't helpless. And I think that's an important thing for us all to kind of remember. We have many more resources than sometimes we think we have or even know we have. I met some interesting people. The first one I always like to talk about is as I was laying on the floor, and it's almost like I like to get it out of the way. And this is kind of a cornerstone of this story. Two mountain bikers came by, and I asked for help, and they looked at me, and they were sitting on the top of the hill, two gentlemen, and they kind of looked at each other, and I explained I had clearly broken my leg, and I needed help, and where I lived, or could you tell someone I was here? And they looked at each other, nodded, and then rode off and left me there. And there was something that was so devastating and heartbreaking about that. But at the same time, in the interaction, looking back and forth, between us, and every woman knows this feeling when you suddenly hear footsteps in a dark garage behind you, where every hair on the back of your neck stands up. At a cellular level, I actually knew they weren't going to help me. And after they left, I actually had a sense of relief that they didn't do anything to hurt me. But I was kind of sitting there, and then that ended up being a catalyst and a spark for me to kind of really start solving my solution. Like I couldn't just wait for someone to find me. I had to do something. Okay. Now the glorious thing is that my cell phone had gone out of service. And so I ended up crawling. I ended up crawling for a pretty significant distance to finally get back into service range. And then the second contact was actually my 911 operator. Now, I've never called 911 before in my life, and boy, let me tell you what, they are skilled communication professionals. She had this lovely tone in her voice that was strong, reassuring, and light. She asked me about my dog. She asked me about my location. She kept talking to me, but I will always remember her saying, she put me on hold, and then she came back quickly and she goes, okay, well, I have you locked into your phone. I know exactly where you are. I've sent 5 teams in for you. The first one that gets there is going to carry you out. And I just remember that overwhelming relief. You know what? I know exactly where you are. I've sent in teams, right? And so that's kind of when the cloud lifted and you're like, okay, we're going to get some different results. Definitely different than what I was feeling when I was at the bottom of the hill and the mountain bikers had left me. And just that shows such a difference in how we connect, how we communicate.
Absolutely. So you will go from this, well, a low, because of course you're injured, and then an even lower low because humanity just went away with the two bikers. Yeah, literally rode off. Yeah. And then to a high where it's like that relief that, okay, they're coming. So what was that rescue team like when they rode in to carry you off, right?
Yeah. So it's really funny. So I hear a little bit of static And then suddenly at the bottom of the hill, I see this guy with a radio kind of pop out. He's in navy blues. He has this bright yellow penny on, and I can hear him say, "I've got her." And then suddenly people just started to appear, right, kind of from all sides, and it was a team of probably 6 or 7 people, and the first thing that was really interesting that they did, all of them got down on their knees. They didn't just stand there and tower over me. But they all got down so they were eye level, just to kind of talk to me and make sure I was okay, and ask me questions and all of that. So I noticed that immediately. And then obviously one person was clearly in charge of making sure they knew my health markers, and so he's like, here's what we're going to do. I need to make sure you're okay. And, I'm going to check your blood pressure, and then we're going to, splint your leg. And, so he does all of that. And he's constantly telling me what he's going to do before he does it, and the team is just patient, and then they start asking me questions. So another gentleman was in charge of the actual, I guess, I don't know what to call it. I think it's like the routine out of the woods kind of thing. What's the journey going to look like? And so he starts asking me questions. Well, how would you like to do this? Do you want to be carried out, or would you like some of us on each side of you? Would you like to walk out? If you carry you out, we'll kind of put you in that bed, and we will kind of strap you in, but that's just, so that you're safe. So you don't slip and everything. And I, of course, Miss Independent, I was like, oh, I'm going to walk. Yeah, that'll be good. And, it's interesting because no one said anything. He nodded. He goes, okay. And then I could see a couple of eyes dart, and I was like, okay. And then the medical person, he said, I'm going to just resplint your leg. We want to make sure there's no movement, and then we'll proceed. I'm like, okay. He went to splint my leg. I had this like jolt of pain, and I was like, yeah, okay. So I'd like to be carried. And I changed my mind, and he was like, absolutely. And I'm sure what I said wasn't actually that polite. I kind of screamed, yeah. But that was fine. So they moved me. It was interesting too. They asked me how my dog Mumbles would like to be escorted out. Would he like to walk? Would he like to be carried? What did I think my dog wanted? And I said, oh, Mumbles is spoiled. He would like to be carried, of course, and it's interesting. They just moved with such precision, and clearly they are the professionals and have done this before. And this is the level of precision. They literally had to walk more than a mile. Okay, I think it was like a mile and a half, maybe almost 2 miles to actually get me out. And during that time, I'm laying on my back. I'm basically watching the canopy of the trees. And you know what? The line of sight between my dog and I was never broken. These men are going up hills, around trees, through the riverbed, but that's the level of precision in which they moved. And I just, I like to call that out, because there is no substitute for excellence. And it's all those small things, and things that I don't even know that they know to do, to be able to do that. But it was really spectacular.
Well, and I think that it shows about, again, this is why we're talking about the whole people, contacts, and connections, yeah. Right? Because you start seeing a trend on why are these things important? The people that you encounter, the contacts and the connections, and just with the different experience you've had, because I'm sure that once you got to the hospital, there wasn't another experience.
Yeah. And it was actually very different. So with the rescue workers, right, they were really protecting my sense of agency. So by asking me so many questions, I got to participate. Okay. I mean, it could have gone differently, where they just said, lady, that leg's broken. We're putting you in the bed. We're strapping you in, and we're going out. They even asked me how I would like to be walked out. Was there a particular route that I wanted to take? right? So they really allowed me to participate. And I like to underscore this because I think in so many ways, that is why people don't ask for help, because we take their agency away. Okay. So if you need help, then you have to submit to the way I want to help you,
Right.
whether it's what you want or not. And so when I think about service, that's one of the ideas that I'm very compelled by. And I think there's a real opportunity to challenge that. When I got to the hospital, it's like I became invisible again. People were talking over me, they're rushing me kind of through the hospital. There's all kinds of noise. No one talked to me. They talked to the EMT, and then finally they passed me to about three different people. Someone parked me in a hallway and said, "We're working on your room." And then I was just left there. Someone came and took x-rays. And so they have a mobile unit. So I'm sitting in the hallway. They go and take the x-rays, and then they leave the x-ray machine there. So I literally can see how broken my leg is.
Mm.
So I'm sitting there isolated in this hallway by myself, looking at a very scary picture. And it's suddenly you realize I'm actually broken. Like you couldn't look at that picture and not feel broken. And it's interesting because I'm not actually that sensitive of a person. And it was like this overwhelming sense of just despair,
Yeah.
that just happened. And I couldn't move, and I really couldn't do anything, you know. And then there was this other person. I honestly don't know who she is. I don't know if she was a nurse or an aide or something. So I think she just looked at me and saw that look in my face, and I was probably about to go into panic or something. And she just kind of rubbed my shoulder and started talking to me, kind of about silly things. Like she was explaining how, you know what, it's early, it's a full moon, it's going to be crazy here tonight. And the vending machine is already out of Doritos and Twizzlers. This is going to be a long night, you know? And apparently there was a new person on staff that everyone thought was really cute. And she's kind of giving me kind of the lowdown on kind of what's happening by the scenes. As she's talking to me, she's gently turning the x-ray machine away so I can't see it, and I can't look at the x-ray anymore. And she just stayed there and talked to me. She asked me about my dog. And again, another really artful conversation, to kind of keep me engaged and to make sure I wasn't panicking. So she was this kind of amazing experience in the middle of all that. And there was a lot of recovery. I'm pretty sure she stopped me from going into shock by being willing to take that time.
Absolutely. So what are some of the trends? Because we're going to have to go to a break here soon, but what are some of the trends in the communications, and where do you think there's opportunities to improve in post-COVID, post-election environment?
Yeah. So I think one is just making sure you're really seeing people. Okay. And remembering, as much time as we spend on screens, there is real value in a smile and an actual handshake and being, and I'm going to use your word, rooted in the real world. Okay. Not the digital world. And I think that's profound. And I think it shapes communication so significantly on pretty much on every level, the experience of it and the experience of participating in it.
Well, and especially when you're talking social media, the written word, right? Because whether we do it intentionally or not, right? It's all about our perceptions, perspectives, and past experience that we can read tone, read things that are not even there. And if you don't have that personal face-to-face, like you can feel, not only just see the person, their body language, but you can feel that. And because we have been so isolated, and with social media, you've got people having disagreements when there was no malintent, there was no anything, and it was all based on other people's backgrounds and assumptions. And I think that is where we do have those opportunities to become face-to-face, to have that physical physicality, right? That sort of thing.
Yeah. And I always like to tell people, if you wouldn't say it standing side by side to someone, don't write it. Okay.
Yep.
And if you're thinking about what you want to communicate, pretend they're your favorite person. How would you say it differently?
Yeah. Well, that's a good place to take a break. And when we come back, we're
Yeah.
going to talk about those lessons learned. But before we go,
Mhm.
Alli, tell folks how they can reach out to you and get a copy of
Yeah.
your book.
Yeah. So again, my biggest presence is going to be on LinkedIn. So you can find me there, Alli Onni. And my contact information is there as well. You can also contact me by email, and that is Alli at theoniproject.com.
Thank you so much. I'm Erica Gifford Mills, and you are listening to Get Rooted Radio, living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Don't forget to visit getrootedradio.com to listen to a replay of this episode, sign up for helpful tips, learn about upcoming events, my speaking engagements, and my new book. That's getrootedradio.com. Welcome back to my guest, Alli Onni. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, great to be here.
So during the last two segments, we've talked about people, places, connections, and the importance of them. But during this segment, I want to get into more, not only you personally, but the lessons learned through your event, right? Through
Yeah,
what made you
yeah,
write your book.
yes.
So you had first moved into a new community, and you were new. It was all a new adventure for you. So how has your role, how has the role of community changed for you?
Yeah. So interesting on top of that, not only had I moved into a new community, but professionally, I'm someone who spent 20 plus years on the road. So my sense of community really wasn't grounded in a particular place. So for me, I'm not someone who had a good understanding of community anyway. Okay. And what that could look like and the possibility, right? So I was someone who wasn't really all that conscious about that. And then I'm this fiercely independent person, and then I'm not grounded to a region or location, right?
Right.
So you kind of have this general sense of, well, you're respectful of people and you travel, but you're always an outsider.
Mm-hmm.
You're always a guest, always a visitor. And there's a lot that is advantageous about that. So there's definitely benefits of that. Okay, I would argue after this experience, there's far more benefits about being connected. And when you think about the things that you invest in and the things that are important to you, right? They have a presence in your life. Okay, when you think about investing in a community, and so you've got to have a connection to it. We invest in the things that we know, not the things we visit.
Yes.
And
And
so that was
this
a good lesson.
this comes at a very, interesting time, this discussion. You know how things just fall into your lap sometimes. And with recent changes in my life, I've been thinking, what am I going to do? And I love this discussion because the adventurous side of me is looking to make a huge change. And
Mhm.
yet being rooted in this community and all that they have done for me, through my cancer journey, through the death of my
Yeah.
son, all that, it's also hard to think about going away because I feel like I owe them so much. And I mean that in a positive way.
I know what
I
you
know
mean.
none of them did anything for payback, right? They were doing it because they're kind and because they cared for me, they cared for my son, they wanted to do it. But I
Yeah.
think that's really important conversation to have is, are you running away from something, or are you running to something, or is this temporary? Is it permanent? And what will you lose when we
Yeah.
don't? So I know we kind of touched base on it a little bit during the last segment, but we've talked about technology, and with your
Yes.
IT background, what is that role of technology and its impact, not only like on community, but communication?
Yeah. So the impact on communication is I would say significant and severe. Okay, in two ways. The actual methods in which we communicate kind of disassociate us Okay. As you said, and people know this, they'll talk to people online in a way they would never if they had to actually look into their eyes, right? So there's that component. The other is just the speed at which technology enables communication and messages to hit us. Okay, so we are constantly absorbing, whether we're fully aware of that or not, right? So we're constantly being hit with messages. And what it does is it actually normalizes things for us. And it's not necessarily a choice, right? So we're not choosing to say, oh, this is what I think is a good new normal. So it's not coming with critical thinking. It's because we're just getting used to the sound bites we're hearing. And we haven't gone through the critical analysis to say, is that accurate? And no one could with just the volume. Okay. There's a tool that I love, and it's called the Dignity Index. And it is actually a scoring system to see whether your language is encoded with dignity or contempt.
Oh, that's amazing.
It is amazing. And one of the things I've started to do is tweak my social media feeds according to this. And what I notice is I get 45% less traffic because I've taken out all the things encoding contempt. And contempt is simply being superior, saying, I'm better than you. I'm more important than you, right? And so again, technology is doing a lot to normalize things that we don't really want to normalize. And I think you can see that. I mean, going through the election and all of that, I think we've seen that. I think we've got the aftermath. Right. What I do appreciate is people are very focused on how am I communicating and how are we thinking about moving forward. So I think this is a really important message. We can control and impact our communication, and it makes a difference on every level.
So how can people kind of do this, the dignity index? Like how, if folks want to look into that a little bit more, because I think that is something that we as individuals can do to make ourselves more aware, because I think sometimes you're not aware of how you come off, especially when it's not intended to be. Some people, yes, they fully know that they intend to come off a certain way, right? But there are some times where folks don't know that. And if they did, they might then have a little bit more self-awareness and then change that communication strategy. So how can we look into that?
So first off, you can just look it up online. It's an online tool. It's available. It's part of a fantastic project. Okay. So all those tools are available, the Dignity Index. Okay. And so here's how I found out about it. I was doing a program and they introduced it, and I was very excited because you know what? And I have 2 degrees in communication. I'm a professional consultant, and I said, oh, I finally have a tool where I can really rank and score other people's communication and help them. And that lasted for about 15 minutes because I opened my mouth up within 15 minutes after looking at the score. And I said, ooh, I have some work to do.
Right.
And so what was going to be a grading tool for me to use actually ended up being this enormous mirror for me to constantly, and it's great to constantly have a scale to kind of really evaluate. It goes from 1 to 8, and you can kind of just figure out kind of where am I? What am I saying? And then you can ask yourself the important questions, and why? Is that just it's something normalized? Is it just I've heard it so much, somehow I've kind of decided it's true? So it's a great tool for self-reflection on communication. But I just crack up being a communication professional, and I was like, this is a tool for me to manage me.
But again, it gets to that self-awareness and because I think everybody, well, I shouldn't say everybody, I don't want to generalize, but many people do want to be the best that they can and aren't having any, always assume positive intention, right? They're not meaning to, but because their environment that they're in, sometimes we get lost in assuming everybody's the same and that what I've gone through, clearly you've gone through, which we all know is not true. Right. And our perspectives are different. Right. And I think it's the micro aggressions that people don't realize one another have experienced. Yes. And when we take a moment to see how am I adding to that, is it something that we as individuals can do, and why it's so important now, especially because the impact on technology and community. And don't get me wrong, folks, I'm all for technology when it's not abused. And I'm also all for technology when it doesn't replace human interaction. Because I think sometimes we fall into that. Or the immediate gratification that people, especially our young ones, maybe now, because it's an instant response, right? You text, you expect to get a response right back. And it's like, yes, it's the same as a phone call sometimes, folks. Like, I'm busy. Yes. I can't text you back right now. But I think that is very, very important.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it is well. And I think there's just opportunity. And there are things where, you know what, we really do believe. And it gives us a chance to really look at that and say, well, let's deconstruct that. What part of that's true? What part might not be? And, you know, so again, I think it's an amazing exploratory tool, and I'm very grateful for the people who put it together. And, you know, I think it's an amazing tool at a really important time.
So one or two lessons learned that you want folks to remember.
Okay. One is that agency and sovereignty are a really important part of service. And if you look at how that team treated and interacted with me, those are the things that they protected. And that's why I could have a return to safety. I don't know that you can have one without the other. You know, so that's, you know, I think one of the really important things. People are not things, and always make sure, even online, okay, that you're crafting your interactions to remind them they are not objects to you. And so that's something I think about a lot. And then the last one is I think about those bikers, and I was angry with them for a very long time until I started asking myself the question, who's invisible to me? Awesome. Who do I not notice? Okay. Everyone has blind spots, and everyone has people in their community that they don't see, or they've decided they don't need to see. And I would challenge everyone to take up that mantra and really start thinking about that. Where are my blind spots? Who don't I see? And who can help me start seeing them?
I love that. Thank you so much. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to finish out the show with rethinking service for a new age. This is Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. If you missed any of the information during the last segments, go to getrootedradio.com to listen to the replay. Don't forget to subscribe, sign up for tips and special events and pricing for upcoming coaching sessions at getrootedradio.com. Welcome back to my guest, Alli Onni. Alli, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Now, tell listeners how they can learn more about you, how they can contact you. You do have something for a couple of our listeners.
I do. So for 2 free copies of the book. So if you get in contact with me, I'll go ahead and mail those to you and kind of get the story out there. You can reach me on email, and that's Alli, ALLI, at theonniproject.com. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn, and all my contact information is there as well. So you can reach out to me.
Perfect. Yeah. This last segment, we're going to focus on the future and rethinking service for a new age. So what would you change about approaches to service through your lessons learned, through your event, how everything kind of unfolded for you? How can we rethink that and look that forward for a new age?
Yeah. So the first thing I want to talk about is figuring out the balance. If we all challenge ourselves to figure out the balance between being transactional versus being in relationship. Yeah. I think service should be a relationship, not a transaction. And so that's kind of one of the shifting pillars, I think, for me. When I work with new consultants, I ask them to consider 3 questions whenever they're starting a new relationship. And this works personally and interpersonally as well as professionally. And so if you're in a relationship with someone, first thing I kind of ask myself is, well, what are you going to do for me? And that's important to know. I think the second thing it's important to know is, what are you going to do with me? What is it that we will do together? And where we can complement each other and work in concert. And then the third one is, what will you do to me? And so often we forget how influenced we are by the people around us and the environments that we are in. And that third question is a real opportunity to kind of guide through, what is that? What is being surrounded by this person in this company, whatever the particular relationship is, how is that impacting me? And I can give you some examples, from being a consultant, the type of customers you have. Are they in an industry that you believe in? What does that do to you if there is an alignment there? So it's a great kind of framework to really start thinking about, how do I manage the relationship part? And again, service to me should be a relationship. I've mentioned it a number of times. Protecting agency. So often what I see, and particularly in consulting and how we go about selling work, is it really is a little bit of a manipulation. And people will even tell you, well, what are your customers' pain points? Is that really how I want to approach my customer? And part of that's linguistic, but pain points is really different than saying, what's missing? What do you need that you don't have? Okay. But I think really approaching that way. And we talk about kind of agency, protecting that, and having a relationship that's a partnership of equals. You can't serve a customer that you're scared of. Okay. And you can't serve a customer that doesn't respect you, or at least you can't do it well. Okay. And so those are things that, I would like to just keep re-highlighting. Protecting agency, understanding the relationship, deciding that service is a relationship versus a transaction. Okay. And a relationship should be embedded with dignity and care. And not all relationships are. Okay. But those are kind of guidelines. Okay. And as I gave you the 3 questions to ask, what is this relationship for me? Ask yourself, if they had to ask those same 3 questions about being in relationship with me, what would those answers look like? And I think a lot of times we don't flip the script, or we don't do it often enough, right? So what am I going to do for them? What am I going to do with them? And certainly, what am I going to do to them? And I think it's really important to understand that. What are we doing to the people around us?
And that is so incredibly important, right? It's a two-way street, right? You shouldn't always be focused on the one way. And when I think we can recreate that new service, and again, this is personally and professionally, folks. So this is not just, in your personal lives and in your professional lives. How do we create that? Because I think that eventually will get to more respect. As you and the word you use earlier, dignity, right? And more that we can then build a better world. Will it happen overnight? Absolutely not. But if we slowly can do that and have that self-awareness, we can grow together.
Yeah. And think of it like skill building. Okay. And again, that's why I kind of like that tool, right? It's skill building. When I first got the tool, I was like, oh, yeah, I have a lot of work to do. And then my scores got better and better because it changed my consciousness, and I do believe, because I'm actually a great believer in just kind of humans. And I think if people understand they have a choice, they will always choose dignity. If people really understand that they have a choice, they will choose, to be the supportive kind of role and that nurturing role. Or at least that role that is allowing flourishing, is a space for flourishing. So those are kind of the me. Oh, go ahead.
No. I was going to say, I love those. Are there any last feedback, tips, techniques that the listeners can really take away?
So from a communication perspective, and I think about this a lot, there's 2 things. One is pause. And I think that is a kind of a soft miracle. It allows you to give yourself enough space to be more thoughtful. And that's, we say that like that's a simple thing. Think about what modern life is. I'm a person who walks around with 2 laptops, 2 cell phones. Okay. I have a watch that talks to me and tells me when I have to get up and I haven't moved enough. Okay, in the day. When you think about just the volume and the speed at which life comes at us, pausing and breathing is, that's an amazing thing. And it also creates amazing results. And the other thing is, and because I think of my rescue team, there is no substitute for excellence. And I don't think we talk about it enough anymore. With everything that we're doing in our communication, in our interaction, say, what does excellence look like in this?
Those are 2 amazing things, right? The pausing, it's just like breathe, right? Give yourself that moment. Okay. And then really always strive for that excellence.
Yeah. And you know what? Better is great, right? But we get to better when we really imagine what excellence is. Right? What does that look like? What does that feel like? What does that smell like? And again, I think we need to have more conversations about that regularly, pretty much on every front. But I think in this day and age, at this moment in time, I'm very focused on communication and interaction because I think that kind of lays the groundwork. It's kind of the tarp we stand on, that everything else gets built on.
Thank you, Alli, so much for being on the show today. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and just have this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes. And I want to thank you all for tuning in to Get Rooted Radio. If you missed any part of today's episode or want to listen again or to other episodes, go to getrootedradio.com for the podcast. And don't forget to tune in the first and third Monday of each month at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central, and 2 p.m. Pacific right here on Transformation Talk Radio. Before I sign off, ask yourself if you are living a rooted life. If the answer is no, set up your free Empower Hour call with me. No charge, no obligations. Go to getrootedradio.com to find out how I can help you take action now. And if you are ready to live, love, and let go, then my new award-winning book and companion workbook, The Rooted Life, Live, Love, Let Go, is for you. Check out the bundled deal at getrootedradio.com under the author section and order your signed copy today. And one last personal message. If you are hurting or need help or know somebody who does, please know the world is a better place with you in it. Don't let the hard days win. Reach out for assistance. You can call or text or chat the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Hours are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the cost is free. Or text HOME, HOME, to 741-741 to reach a trained crisis counselor through Crisis Text Line. It's a global not-for-profit organization, and it's free and confidential. Thank you again for tuning in. Have an amazing day. Do not let those hard days win, and I'm looking forward to the next time on Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills, living it up, loving it up, and letting it go. Visit getrootedradio.com if you've missed any part of this hit show, and tune in on transformationtalkradio.com to live fearlessly in your more and powerfully rooted in your unlimited yes. For more information and to work with Erica directly, visit getrootedradio.com. That's getrootedradio.com, and get ready to live it up, love it up, and let it go.